This is Jorge Rivera with FirstCoast.tv. We invited Dave Bruderly from Congress District 4. He's on the ballot this election, and we wanted to get to know him. We think the community should get to know the people that are on the ballots in our county and adjacent counties too. So, Dave, what is District 4? What does it encompass?
Oh, hi, Jorge. I'm very glad to meet you and get to know you and talk with you a little bit. I'm the Democrat running for the Congressional District 4 seat. It's a county or a seat that runs from Nassau County in the north through Duval County down to St. Johns County here in the south, basically from the Georgia line and the St. Mary's River all the way down to Hastings and the potato fields in the southern part of St. Johns.
That is a large area.
It's a good-sized three-county district, and a big population center is Jacksonville, and we have the north side of Jacksonville, the south side, and the beaches, and the downtown wedge is part of what's Congressional District 5. These districts were created by the gerrymander. That came out of litigation from the League of Women Voters that tried to break up the previous gerrymander, which was very controversial, and which guaranteed for many years that there would be 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat representing all of Northeast Florida.
Okay.
And now that dynamic has changed completely.
Okay.
We have very different demographic mix in the districts today, and it's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Okay. And what are some of the big issues that this area has, you think? When you look at it, what do you think are some of the bigger problems that need to be solved?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. You know, if you talk to the Chamber of Commerce, they want to dredge St. Johns River so Jacksport can bring in big ships to bring more cheap stuff in from China. If you talk to the military, they want to make sure that you protect the Mayport Naval Station, Kings Bay, Naval Air Station at Jacksonville, and the Blunt Island Marine Depot, and the Air National Guard facility at Jacksonville International Airport. If you talk to folks that live kind of on the fringes of society, they want to have jobs, and they want to have jobs, but they also want to have a healthy environment and good schools for their kids. And so you put all that together, and Jacksonville is kind of like a rich man, poor man kind of community.
Very true.
Very true. You got a lot of really people living on the fringe who are just, a lot of them are former military who come out of the Navy, and they're trying to make a start in their life, and they're looking for transition opportunities from working in the Navy to a good job in the civilian side. A lot of them are young kids that were born here, and they want to stay here, but they're having a hard time finding decent jobs. A lot of older retired people live on the beaches. Ponte Vedra and North St. John's has attracted a lot of snowbirds from up north, and they're well off. They've set their life pattern, and they've worked hard and earned their retirement, or they've earned their place in the sun, so to speak. So you've got all these different dynamics in play that make the district very interesting. And kind of what I'm about is that we need to make Jacksonville, North Central Florida, Northeast Florida more sustainable, so that anybody who lives here has a decent shot at having a good life and enjoys all the wonderful amenities that we have here in this part of the world. I mean, to me, this is paradise. I've been here in Florida since 1974. And lived in Gainesville for almost all those years, where I was a consulting engineer.
All right.
And I've worked all over not only the state of Florida, but all over the world in various types of usually large infrastructure projects. Building power plants, doing environmental studies, so you could build an electric power plant, for example. We helped the Navy bring the submarine base to Kings Bay. Part of the environmental team that did the siting studies to help the Navy decide that was the best place on the East Coast to build a nuclear submarine base. So, you know, I've kind of got this infrastructure background that has been very important in shaping my worldview, you know. And my view of the world is quite a bit different than that of a lot of people, because I've had this very broad background, and I've traveled the world, much like you. You know, when I was 19 years old, I went around the world on a cargo ship.
Wow.
As a midshipman at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and my first ship went to West Africa, where we sailed right into the middle of the Nigerian Biafra War.
Yes, I remember that.
And first time I ever saw pain and suffering up close and personal. We had people packed to the gunwales on old ships.
Those pictures on TV were heartbreaking.
It was horrible. It's much like what's happening today in Sudan and even Nigeria. So, you know, and the second ship went around the world. And we sailed went through Suez Canal right before the Israeli-Egyptian War in '67. We went through from Karachi to Mumbai, or Bombay at the time, when they were fighting over Kashmir. And we also went around Vietnam, where everybody in America was focused on what are we doing in Vietnam. You know, nobody quite knew, and then, you know where that went. So I've seen the world as it really exists, not stuck in the bowels of an aircraft carrier, you know, on Yankee Station Zulu, supporting the military mission, but out there in the real world, dealing with real people. On the docks, the longshoremen, the stevedores, and then surrounding community with various restaurants and poor people and other kinds of recreational activities that sailors could get into if they wanted to. And that helped me get my start into the consulting business, where we focused on the environmental. And how do you prevent making problems by doing some sort of economic activity? How do you, and if you already made a mess, how do you clean it up?
Right. And you talked about sustainability. What do you think is the major thing we would need in this area for sustainability?
We have huge problems with our water in the St. Johns River. And in the coastal estuary, we have too much nitrogen loading, too many nutrients going into our fresh waters. In the south, it's the Everglades and the Indian River Lagoon. And the problems that have developed down there from rapacious development, development that was not well thought out. Conversion of wetlands into sugar, for example, has created huge problems. Here in the St. Johns Basin, we have a problem with excessive consumptive use of water in the upper St. Johns to fuel the growth in central Florida that threatens to suck a lot of the water out of the St. Johns and make less water available for those of us downstream, including the estuary. And then you also have the nutrient loading from stormwater runoff that, frankly, as an engineer, one of my first projects in 1975 was we did studies. We actually sampled the water during a rainstorm, and we documented that, you know, 50% of all the pollution going into our lakes, rivers, and streams was from stormwater runoff, what are called non-point sources. So the engineers and scientists, we defined these problems 40 years ago. And here we are today, we're looking backwards, you can see that the politicians at that time, and in the meeting in the last 40 years, didn't do anything about it, and didn't do enough about it. You know, they just kind of said, well, we got to make money in the short term, so we'll let the guy build the shopping center, and we put in a little retention basin to take out the sediments so you don't fill the creek up with sediments, but they forgot about the nitrogen and the phosphorus that goes with that, and they were allowed to just come right in. Septic tanks the same way. So now we've got a huge problem in the St. Johns Basin, and we've got to figure out how to go back and retrofit these existing communities at significant cost to everybody. And then for new development, we got to do a better job of getting, especially here in St. Johns County, having more sustainable, walkable communities where we're turning pine trees into subdivisions. We got to do a much better job at that.
So what would be your main message to the person who's going to vote for you, or not vote for you, but for those who are curious of who you are and what you offer to that part of Florida that you represent? What would be your main message to them?
Main message is that I'm interested in solving problems, and I recognize that policy really frames how problems are defined, and I recognize that policy really shapes an individual's response to those problems. If you have a policy that says thou shalt not make pollution, then that tells everybody that, hey, you got to do a better job of not making pollution. And unfortunately, we don't have that mindset today in Congress. The mindset in the Congress, put in place by politicians who represent special interest groups, is that you can go out and hire an engineer and you can hire a lawyer and you can make all the pollution you want as long as you get a permit.
Right.
So there's no incentive to do anything more than just meet the minimum standard of the permit. Whereas the problems that we face today, such as greenhouse gas pollution and the runoff from the streets and the parking lots with nutrients, stormwater runoff, the problems we face today, people have to go beyond the minimum required and do things that are in their own self-interest, but which also protect the commons from this existential threat of climate change caused by human activities. It's both fossil fuel combustion, and it's also the clearing of the tropical forest and even our forest here in the United States, because these sinks of greenhouse gases have been destroyed in large part, and now the atmosphere is responding to that in ways that frankly create chaos and that nobody can predict accurately.
And also this area is just growing in population. It's unbelievable.
We're growing the population, and everybody wants to live. Everybody wants to live on the water, and unfortunately, the seas are rising. Sea levels are rising, and hurricanes and tropical storms are getting more severe because there's more energy going into the systems. So you've got some tension here that people are going to have to. First, they got to understand the science. First, they got to accept the fact that this is happening. They got to believe what the scientists are telling them. And the problem is that we've got ideology in politics where you've got about half the politicians of the Republican flavor don't want to accept what the scientists are saying because it's bad news.
Yes.
So they stick to their literal
party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those who believe and don't believe.
If you don't believe, then you have a hard time understanding.
Yes.
So the first step is understanding, and then the second step is, okay, now that we think we understand the problem, what can we do about it that's rational and logical? And that's where I come in, because what I want to do is convene a process here in north central Florida and northeast Florida and even southeast Georgia, make it a regional process where we can take the resources we have, like the electric utility at JEA, which is owned by the people. We have military bases which have, the military understands the challenge of climate change. A report just came out that said that Mayport is threatened by rising sea levels, that 25% of Mayport Naval Station could be underwater in less than 30 years.
Also, the Pentagon has accepted the science now, and they're doing things they need worldwide to protect their interests.
But the Congress, the Republican-controlled Congress, has blocked funding. So they actually passed a bill in May that says that the military, the Pentagon, cannot use any monies to implement any of the findings from the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change, for example. And this is very short-sighted thinking. And it's driven by ideology rather than facts and science. So this is just one example of how we could bring the military community together with the electric utility and with the planning functions of the 3 counties, and we could come up with what I call the Brutally Clean Energy and Climate Action Plan.
Okay.
So we just put the facts on the table, and then we let people think about it, but we have a process in place, very similar to how you do planning for land development and so forth, where people can actually understand what the problems are, and then everybody can figure out how to comply in their own way. But we also set a goal. Last week, I believe that President Obama and Xi Jinping, I'm sorry, I blew his name, the dictator who runs Communist China, they came to an agreement that the United States and China were going to start to ratify the Paris Accords on the climate agreement. The United States agreed to cut our emissions by 25% within the next 10 to 15 years. China agreed to simply stop increasing their emissions, and they would plateau by the year 2030. Well, that still puts, we're leading by example. China's saying they're going to lead by example. We really don't know that for a fact, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. What do we do about it? Well, in my opinion, what we do about it is we start doing things smarter to reduce our carbon footprint with technology and behavior, and learn how to do it here in Jacksonville, and then we can export this knowledge and technology to Africa and to Central and South America, the Caribbean. If we can create jobs here, teaching and letting our young people learn how to do that, so they can go around the world and help the rest of the world also solve the greenhouse gas problem. Because if we don't have a global solution based on the Paris Accords, we're all screwed. It's that simple.
No matter what we do here, we can't.
So the big difference between me and my opponent, and frankly the Republican control of the U.S. House of Representatives, is that I'm willing to address these issues and look at the facts and move forward based on the facts,
Okay.
and not just limit myself to ideology.
Okay.
And that cuts across the board into solar energy. It cuts into making houses zero net energy,
Right.
so that your bill on this house could be retrofitted, the studio could be retrofitted to use a lot less energy.
Right.
And the way you do that is you change the business policy of the electric utility, whether it's Florida Power and Light or Jacksonville Electric Authority. You have policy in place at the national and state level that empowers these companies to change their business model to empower people to take responsibility and do the right thing for the entire community, because it's in their own self-interest if seas don't rise to the point where we flood all the wonderful things that make this place such a wonderful place to live.
Okay.
And if we don't take that kind of action, we are going to be underwater.
Okay. You have a website we can go to. I'll
Yeah,
put it there.
Right, at brutally.com.
Okay.
And we have a Facebook page, which is
All right.
Brutally #4 Congress, and we even have a Twitter feed, which is
So yeah, people
Brutally.
can get to know more about you and about all the issues that you stand for and how you plan to deal with these issues. We thank you very much for
Well, thank
spending
you.
this little time with us. We like to give people the opportunity to get to know those who are.
But I want to empower individuals to make their own decisions.
Right.
And this goes across the board, not just the climate pollution issues, but on healthcare issues, on economic development,
Right.
some of the contentious social issues, like
Yes.
the 14th Amendment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which says equal protection under the law for
Right.
all persons.
Right.
You don't even have to be a citizen for the 14th Amendment
Right.
to apply to you if you're in this country. So
Right.
equal protection under the law, and having people be responsibility, empower individuals, people to be responsible for their own actions and for their own lives. That's how you create prosperity.
All right.
You
Well,
turn people loose.
We thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and it's great to get to know you, and hopefully we'll hear more about you.
I hope so.
You have a good day, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.